Well, officially, welcome to an EPAA Fireside, Zach, and thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it, especially, from the sector you're coming from, being really busy and giving us a bit of time. And well, Dana and I were both really excited when you reached out to us because with the whole AI thing, the PAEA world, I don't speak for the rest of the world as such, but in the UK, we are late to the party, it is fair to say. I mean, we tried bringing this up with EAs when the global financial recession hit and companies in the banking sector started bringing in more technology. And, I've got the very real statistics of what happened to our profession. I mean, it dropped a huge amount. The percentage is huge. And so I'm probably, and I have heard someone jokingly call me this in the UK, I'm the Grim Reaper of the PA world here. But what I see it as is just trying to be realistic. So I want to get people excited about AI. And as a small business owner, we use a lot of it because it's helping our business. But I also want the EAs to have a healthy dose of realism that yes, it will change this profession. We don't quite know what our jobs will look like in 10 years, but there are some things I think I could say with certainty. These new generations of CEOs coming in who are millennials, Gen Z, who've been brought up with technology, and obviously we've got Gen Alpha who are at school now. It won't be long before they're with us as well. And I can train PAs on a lot of things, but I can't train them on AI. I'm not an expert on that. But with the firesides, I like to sort of go back to, and I know the American education systems are really different to ours, but when you sort of came out of, did you go to college, high school? Did you go into university?
I did, yeah. I
What was
got
going
what's
to,
called I did an undergraduate degree in computer engineering.
oh, wow. So how long was that? How long did it take you?
It was a 4-year program. Yeah, I did it in 4 years, and this is going to date me. That's fine. I graduated 2011, so it's been, what is that, 13 or so years out of it now.
And was that, I mean, was that a career you sort of picked? I mean, because sometimes students here they get railroaded into degrees by their
Mhm.
families because it's happened in the family before, or it just looks interesting, or were you kind of really earnest about the career that you might have?
Sure, yeah. So I would say I've always had a bit of like a single track mind. My father is a graphic designer, my stepmom's a social worker, so I'm certainly the aberration being more analytical. But I remember when I was a teenager in high school, the iPod had just come out, and it was the version that had the color screen on it. And there's
Yeah,
a local magazine here in the States called Time Magazine, and they covered the engineering team behind it. So on the cover of the article, there was the entire executive leadership team. And the part that kind of stood out to me, just being a kid looking at this article that my parents had bought, was there was graph paper on the table and there was like a sketch of the iPod designs. And I'm sure it was staged because it's a magazine cover, but it was sort of like a light bulb moment for me where I wasn't particularly good at math or anything really. I was a kid, but I saw that and just like the light bulb moment went off that this technology that we all live and breathe and love, it doesn't just happen. There are a lot of people who work hard to make it happen and who put an effort to make things usable, and I didn't care about being the rock star who's holding the iPod, getting this photo taken. I wanted to be the person who drew it on the graph paper.
yeah.
And I learned more about the space, and ended up applying early decision to Virginia Tech was the school I graduated from. And I figured I would apply early decision. That's like December deadline. And then if March rolled around and I didn't get in, I would go have like a plan B, C, D, all these other schools, other majors. But I just kind of figured let's try this, see how it goes, and then if it works out, great. If it doesn't, then I'll go be a responsible person with hedging my bets and everything. And yeah, it worked out. I was able to get into the program, and then the way it works is you join the general engineering college, and then you take about a year and then specialize from there. So that gets you through all like the basic chemistry, math, physics classes, and it was just like a new world that kind of opened up where I felt almost a little bit guilty. And you'll notice this if you talk to a lot of other engineers, is the terminology they use when they're learning something new is often like the same way a kid describes their toys, like, oh, let me play around with that, or I haven't had a chance to take it for a spin, like a kid might refer to a bicycle. But I didn't, yeah, fast forward 13 years or so, and I feel like I'm still coming in like a freshman in college. Everything changes so quickly that I feel like every 6 months or so, I'm brand new again. And it's just been a really interesting ride because if you think about it in terms of human history, by putting a simple web page together, something that you and I could do in an afternoon,
Mm,
you've got reach to billions of people. Where if you were like the best merchant in the Middle Ages, like you could maybe reach what, 1,000 people in a day. But just like the scope and the scale and the reach, and here we are having a conversation in different countries, thousands of miles apart, and it's just been really cool to watch how quickly everything's been changing. And then the reason I'm so optimistic is the opportunities that that opens up, because there's no one entity that has all the answers figured out. Like the way the technology industry tends to work is somebody makes a great invention, but they don't know how it's going to be used. I feel like these fundamental technologies like the internet or mobile phones or AI, they tend to be like tools. And if you're a great tool builder and you go and you build a chainsaw or something, you don't know everything that people are going to go build with that. You just know that it's like a good tool that solves certain things well and other things not so well. And I feel like when you have rapid change, like in AI today, the implications for all these different industries are kind of up for grabs. That it's
mm.
not like there's one person who has everything kind of sorted out. So I just think it's a really interesting time to get involved and to figure out how to use it, to borrow from the engineer terms, take it for a spin, play around with it. And I feel like there are some areas about the industry that can afford to be changed. And people like to talk about change and growth. And this is an opportunity, but it's not like super clear. So that's the part that I think we need to grapple with, is how do we figure out that, how do we take this powerful chainsaw or hammer or chisel and build something awesome out of it, and not something that we wouldn't want to have lying around. I think that's the challenge that we're up against right now, just generally in the industry, not just one industry or another, just across the world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been an EA in different sectors, and I've worked in HR as a global HR department. HR is getting increasingly automated and will continue to sort of they're going through this whole transition at the moment. Over here, they're rebranding themselves into the people profession.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we'll see how that works out. I'm a little bit there should have always been that in the first place. We were, but recruitment as well. So that was always very sort of person to person, face to face. And there's large parts of that actually probably a lot of assistants, given how many recruiters treat us, we'd probably be pleased if some of them get automated, to be honest with you. So there could, there could be some positives in a cynical way. But do you know, it's interesting what you were saying, because I never would have considered myself as anything of a technologist. I'm 41 now. I'm an elder millennial because I'm right at the top of my generation. But the technology that I was taught in my what was called a secretarial diploma was all around touch typing and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, being able to work the PowerPoint, Excel, and Word, and actually, it was only when I started. Well, when I was at a big global recruiter called Hayes, and they at the start of the global financial recession, whilst a lot of global firms were saying we're not spending money, we're not doing this, we're not doing that, I acquired another director, the group IT director, group technology director, and I started to get a bird's eye view of, oh, okay, right, perhaps I'm not as stupid as I thought on technology. I could actually understand this, but they were one of the few FTSE firms that actually invested a lot of money in technology during that financial recession. And then when I started up EPAA as a small business owner, which and we'll get on and talk about that, but
Mm-hmm.
you're forced to learn things that you have to.
For
And
sure, yeah.
so my tech manager, Leah, she has a rule with me that when she fixes a tech problem for us, she'll send me a Loomly video of how she's done it, or I have to be on with her to learn it. So I can do a lot on EPA's website now. I've been to coding classes. I started attending technology conferences. and just trying to get a feel for the different elements of tech. And I have to say, yeah, I've got more of a mind for it than I thought, if that makes sense. It
That's
seems to
awesome.
be
Yeah.
there. Yeah. So if I've got it, then my other assistants, it must be there for them as well. So what was your first job? So when you'd done all your degree and your qualifications, what was your first job? Did you go in the corporate world or straight into startup?
Yeah, I was a bit calculated. So I wanted to spend some time in a large corporation just because as an engineer, that's where you get scale. So I joined a company called Qualcomm. They build they're a telecom company. They do a lot of things, but primarily known for telecom.
Yeah.
And I was on the team. This is right when, again, I already dated myself, so it's fine. 3G was still a technology that people were using at the time when I joined. And this 4G LTE network was just coming out. And my job was, as an entry level engineer, was on the signal bars. So there was a team of about 30 people, and we would handle scenarios like when you're flying down the highway at 80 miles an hour. If you go out of range of one cell tower into range of the next one, how do you not drop the call? Um, Sounds pretty simple, but there's just a lot of different scenarios. Atmospheric conditions can affect how strong the signals are radiating through space and things like that. And that was my job. I did that for about 3 years. And it was pretty awesome because of the growth trajectory the company was on. I think by the time I left that role, they were shipping about 1 billion phones a year using code that I had written. So you just learn a
Wow.
lot about scale, where if
Yeah.
you make a bug in your code, there was a test team in all major metro areas. So you would submit your code 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. It would go to the test teams, and then they try it out in Tokyo. They try it out in Manila. They try it out in Washington, D.C. They try it out in San Diego. And you'd come back, and sometimes there'd be weird bugs that would like only happen in certain countries. And you just learn, I would say, like technical rigor, and you learn communication skills, all these I would say fundamental skills that I don't really think about exercising today. You just kind of do as an extension of yourself. But I wanted to do that for a few years, and it certainly helped too when, as you mentioned, as a small business owner, when you venture out on your own and you say, "Hey, I'm Zach from Yembo." No one knows what Yembo is. No one knows what Zach is. You sometimes don't get anyone picking up the phone. So being able to have like a big brand name behind me, I thought was helpful. And in terms of just personal development, like being able to have gone through that level of rigor and being vetted by a company with 30,000 peers with the same title, they get pretty good at hiring engineers because they do it a lot. And then plus the networking, the people you get to meet, and then the brand name of being ex Qualcomm. So I had one job out of school, stayed on that at that company overall for about 5 years, spent 3 on the first team, then switched over to an internal innovation team where I got to be hands-on with AI technology. And then this was 2015, where there was a popular academic benchmark. It was sort of like a 1,000-way multiple choice test, and universities would submit um, source code that would compete in it, and some corporate research arms would. And the idea was if I were to show you a picture, you had to tell me what it was of. And like the categories, there were 1,000 of them. So maybe tens of different species of dogs, for instance, and that's how granular it had to get. And the challenge was to further the state of the art in recognition AI. And what happened in 2015 was there was a submission from Microsoft that won that competition, and it had north of a 95% accuracy rate. And that 95% number was sort of like the holy grail of the industry because there were college educated humans that had benchmarked themselves at 95%. So 2015 rolls around, this competition's kind of chipping away 1 to 2% gains year over year. And then all of a sudden, kind of in this obscure corner of academia, computers became better than people at identifying objects and images. And it seemed like to me as an industry insider that like nobody was paying attention to it. Like if you looked at Google News, like no one seemed to care. And now there were self-driving car companies and some drones and kind of like a relatively few number of industries that were pioneering the technology. But the view that I just couldn't shake was like, this is going to change everything. And it seems like nobody knows yet. So how do we find an industry that's not going to see this advancement coming? How do we join it, take the technology, make it applicable and relevant to this industry, and sort of be like magicians in the industry where people aren't expecting it, they don't even know it's possible. And my wife was working at a moving company. Um, And that's how it all started, where I had this understanding that computers are better than people at identifying objects and images. No one seems to know yet. And my wife was a logistics coordinator. So if you were moving internationally, she was in the international department, she would be responsible for packing your goods up, getting it to a port, steamship line, customs, all the 20 million things that can go wrong in that process. And as you can imagine, getting an accurate inventory of what people have in their home is kind of critical. If you forget I have a basement or I have an attic and you send the wrong size crew or truck, that can be pretty detrimental to everything shipping on time. So the more I learned about the industry, thanks to her connections, really, the more I realized that it wasn't just the like kind of unscrupulous moving companies that were having issues estimating. Everyone had the issue. Cream of the crop moving companies, two guys in a pickup truck. It's just hard to do. It's logistically complicated. Look at these bookshelves behind me. How many boxes would it take to pack it up? Like trained experts don't even agree all the time on everything. And that's where we realized we can come in and we're not going to replace people. It's still a very human process. You're trusting somebody to pack up literally everything you own and ship it across the world. So that human element of trust has to be there. Nothing else really works. But I feel like as human beings, we'd probably rather spend our time building rapport with the client, understanding what's really important, and less time counting how many boxes it's going to take. So the technology we built is not like a self-driving car. It doesn't replace anybody. It just takes the tedious part out of that process and allows the human to shine. So a typical in-home visit takes maybe 60 to 90 minutes on average, where someone will walk around with a clipboard and kind of write down, walk around in every room and see what the person has. Our process takes about 15 to 20 minutes, and people are rating the calls as higher quality because you're not distracted as the mover with all these little details. The AI is doing that part, and you can ask about, oh, I see that artwork on the wall. It looks like a painting. Is it a print? Is it a painting? And people talk about, oh, it's really important. It's an heirloom, and that's like a great opportunity to explain the right kind of packing services because there are more premium things that you can do. And just like getting to understand the client better, I feel like is the biggest value prop that we're providing. Um, where on the surface, people hear AI. I don't think Hollywood did us any favors with the Terminator franchise and things like that, where it's sort of intimidating. It can
Yeah.
be perceived as maybe like an imperialistic force coming into your industry and it's here to blow things up. But I think the way that we see it is this is a tool that can help. And we've had clients open new satellite offices. Historically, that's been really capital intensive. You have to lease new warehouses, buy more trucks, hire more crew. And we've had people just buy Google ads in a new area of the country and then survey remotely using Yembo and then only decide to go out and fulfill the jobs if they're able to book them. So kind of de-risking that expansion opportunity. And these are new business models that you just couldn't do before AI, right? If you had to physically ring a doorbell and show up, you're going to have to drive across the country. So it's been really kind of encouraging to see, still in like the early innings, but these early adopters that kind of took that plunge, the benefits that they're able to see in terms of you can service your clients in a like in the way that they want to be served. You can do it more frequently. You can staff easier. We don't have to physically be located in a particular zip code to be able to do it. And these kind of benefits that are maybe hidden. They're like maybe not the most obvious use cases that you'd think of. Oh, bring AI in the industry, and now you don't have to sign a lease on a warehouse. It's maybe not the most obvious, but I think that's where the real opportunity lies, and that's why I'm personally really excited about AI. Is any good technology when it matures enough, I've found tends to just become like an extension of yourself. Like we scheduled this
Mm.
call today over email. I wasn't thinking about TCP protocols and the undersea Atlantic internet cables. I was just like, I'm going to shoot Victoria an email. And it was just like an extension of myself.
Yeah.
And the technology aspect, it was there and it was important, but it wasn't top of mind. And
Mm.
I think AI right now is certainly top of mind because it's very new, but I don't think it'll stay that way forever. I think the it'll become embedded in the fabric of how we get work done, and then there will be more freedom and more opportunity to focus on new areas that we want to focus on instead of having to, at least in my industry, go count the cardboard boxes.
yeah, my brother-in-law owns a removal company, and yeah, I should really tell him about you guys and that there is some AI to help out there. I was just thinking about the awful move that he did for us from London to Dorset. But do you know, I mean, with the AI, I saw a bit of AI software a couple of weeks ago, and I
Mhm.
need to go back and do another demo because I got a little bit overexcited, and that's how my mind works. But it was how the AI can strategize a boss's diary, and it was, you know, something that might take a PA EA a few hours to do. I was watching it in front of me; it was doing it in seconds, and I thought, wow, this is actually a game changer. But I mean, I put a little bit in our closed Facebook group about it, but I knew if I put this on LinkedIn, I would have EAs pile on me because
Mhm.
there's the fear factor, and we've always had this strap line that, oh, an exec can never do without an EA. And I counterbalance that sometimes because I'm trying to get us to be more disruptive as a profession and say, well, actually, why do you need to cling on to every aspect of a calendar of your boss? That might not even be here in 10 years' time as part of your repertoire and, you know, the role specs. I'm just trying to, yeah, as I say, I think I am coming across as a bit disruptive, but I'm deliberately trying to do that because I'm seeing it for myself as a small business owner. And for small businesses across the world, actually, it got really, you know, it was really tough during the COVID years coming through that. So it did
Mhm.
force us to look at what other technology we could utilize to try and, you know, be as efficient as you can be. And I've barely even scraped the surface with it. You know, I'm running a not-for-profit here. There's many other small businesses that are, you know, profit making that are far in front of what I'm doing at the moment. But with EPA and the EAs, it's about, you know, one of the big things here, and I know it's probably the same in America, it's about employability. And that if you get made redundant from your firm or something happens, that you know you're still employable. And so I'd like to see more PAEA CVs, I know you call them resumes in America, coming through with more technology components on it because we've been a bit
Mhm.
thin on the ground for that. I mean, there are numerous EAs working in tech companies, so we know that, and they're absolutely loving it. So that's been sort of picking up, but there's definitely a fear with me that we've got sort of 10 steps back on this and we need to shift it a little bit. Now, I'm saying it nicely to everybody on because I mean, it is, yeah, I guess it is frightening in the same way that people, I mean, I did learn to touch up on a typewriter. I I'm old, young enough. But I remember when the first computers came in, and that was right at the end of my schooling education. So I very quickly switched because I didn't have enough time on that typewriter.
Mhm.
You know, and as you say, the iPods come in and we're on what, iPhone 199? I mean, they
Something
just
like
keep
that, yeah.
coming out. So I think a lot of us have adapted, been more adaptable than we think that, you know, we probably are sort of day to day. But I wanted to come back to you quickly on the startup thing and running a small business because one of my predictions for the UK profession is that I think the bulk of the assistant roles will be in small, medium enterprises. Most of the job cuts, and this has been a pattern I've been tracking since 2008, and my predictions haven't been wrong yet. And I'm not always right, but I haven't been wrong on this. But I do see the much larger companies to continue to keep restructuring our roles. So I'm not saying there won't be a need for EAs. I do think there will be, but I think the bulk of the jobs will be an SME market for startups, entrepreneurs, that kind of thing. And some PAs from larger organizations where everything's been quite process driven and you can't do this without swiping your card and you can't do that.
Mhm.
Whereas, you know, in a smaller business, you know, a PA said to me the other day, but Vic, what do you do? Well, I'm the cleaner, I do PR, I do marketing, I fix the per website if I can. You know, you're literally doing a bit of everything. Have you, so when you started up, was it just you and your wife and you've grown a team? How does it work at
Sure.
Yembo?
So my wife is a stay-at-home mom now. She was uh, wanted to be at arm's length and not super involved in the day-to-day. So she's responsible for kicking that first domino down. But everywhere we've gone since then, she's kind of a cheerleader from the sidelines. I have a co-founder. He's the CEO of the company. I run the engineering, design, product teams, and then he runs operations, sales,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. So we're about 75 people now. About half of
Yeah.
that is on my team, half of that is on his team. And yeah, I think coming back to your points on um, like the change that AI is bringing to this industry, I think the thing to remember about AI is it's a tool. If you
Mm.
think about mobile phones or word processing technology that came before, like it's fantastic at certain things, but absolutely awful in the wrong tool in some other areas. And if you look at how AI is created, this doesn't have to be like a super in-depth technical conversation, but they're trained on a lot of data.
Yeah.
And that means that for routine tasks that are completely regimented, where exceptions don't happen, they work really well.
Mm.
For the areas where you need to be creative, where you need to have intuition, where you need to have good communication skills, it's not just that AI is bad at it, it's that AI is not even on a trajectory to get close to doing that. If you look at how it all works. So ChatGPT was trained on mostly Twitter, Reddit, and some other data sources. So if you go and have it ask you to tell you a joke, it will probably make you cringe, not laugh. And that's because it's trained on like this middling 50% of like what the median stuff of people talk about is. So if you want to be exceptional, if you want to push a limit somewhere, if you want to do the right thing in a complicated scenario, it's just not fundamentally how it's set up. If you want it to come up with silly poems or things along those lines where it's like okay to be in that middling 50%, it's really good at it. But that's why I don't really see it as an alternative to a person. I see it as something that can supercharge and enable what a person would do. But that creative stuff that you really need, if you just get rid of it, it's kind of worthless, right? Like it's like having if you have a bunch of tools in your shed but no carpenter, you're not going to end up with a house no matter how many
No.
tools people throw at you. So I think like this narrative that AI is going to replace everybody is kind of missing the point in that it's um it's going to allow people to do more. It brings down the
Mm.
labor that it takes to do certain things, but you still need to know when to use the right tool, when to do certain things. And I feel like it's probably going to create more work for everyone else. I mean, when the last industrial revolution happened and everyone was talking about is this the end of labor as we know it, it ended up piling on more work on everybody. So I feel like the two main things folks miss are that AI is not on a trajectory to do absolutely everything. There's certain areas it does well, certain areas it's awful at. And on top of that, the work that we're doing is not zero sum. So if we're able to have something that used to take a day now take an hour, that doesn't mean that the work just like vanished and there's nothing else to do
Yeah.
and we can go retire on the beach. Like probably there'll be new expansion opportunities, new other situations that come up. And like I said at the start of the talk, people haven't really figured out exactly all of the implications. So who's going to do that? It's going to not
Mm.
be the AI engineers. It's going to be the people in the business that have the context around it because they know what works and what doesn't work. So there's that line that AI is not going to take your job, but a person who's using AI might. And I think the truth that that hits on is there's that like top percentile of work that you need to do that's creative, that's intuitive, that understands how the business works, the nuances around what flies and doesn't fly. And that kind of work will be able to do more of it. So what if you weren't bogged down with something that is a bit more mundane and you're able to be freed up to go focus on more things? I think we'll see the nature of work change, and at least for I think a lot of folks that kind of figure those pieces out, it'll let us do more of the stuff that is interesting and less of the
Yeah.
things that are mundane and boring.
I think, well, and that's the very issue with our industry. So I mean, I've written blogs on this. I'm considered quite controversial in the AI industry because I just shoot from the hip with this stuff. But for over 10 years now, this has been 10 plus long years. EAs have been desperate to get involved more with the businesses in which they work and, come out of these sort of traditional admin type things. We've got some very talented and very educated assistants out there who really want to get involved in the strategy, the innovation of a firm. And I've been lucky in my career because I was loudmouthed and demanded it. I got it. But that doesn't that, that route doesn't work for every assistant. So I'm hoping that it will do that. I think there's a couple of things. You mentioned Chat GPT, which I think a lot of assistants have been delving into now. I love it, but I'm really sad because a lot of people I consider good writers on LinkedIn now. I can because I love Word.
Mhm.
I'm a very wordy person. I can tell, and I know there's an app out there that can tell you if you copy and paste a LinkedIn blog or LinkedIn post into it, it'll tell you how much of it's been written by Chat
Mhm.
GPT. And I'm like, oh no, but if you know, so the ability to be able to write a blog or a post or of like journalists do for newspapers and articles, I really hope we don't lose that. Because I'm seeing it so much on LinkedIn now. So it's like we've gone on this kind of yeah, I'm just going to pick up on some of the comments we're getting here.
Sure.
Kim saying, I can tell if something's been written by Chat GPT. It's really disappointing. And it is because one of the greatest things I think we have to offer as human beings is to how we articulate in via words, and whether that's via a book or, an author you like following, or there's lots of people I follow on LinkedIn because I love their blogs, but I'm noticing it's becoming very Chat GPT. And I'm like, "Ah." Do
Yeah,
you
and
think it's just a fad, Zach? Is this just because we're all excited about it and it will simmer back down?
yeah, I hope so. I mean, I was fortunate enough to get access to the internet in the 90s because my dad was working at a company that let him take home the computer and they set up the internet. And I remember there was one night where he went on the web page and he's trying to explain to like 7-year-old me the internet, and he shows me this web page. His computer screen's all white. There's just black text on it. I can barely read English, but I don't recognize what's on the screen. I'm trying to read it. It doesn't quite make sense. It kind of looks like pictures. And he tells me, Zach, we're in Japan. And I was like, that sounds cool. What's Japan? And he's explaining, like, brings out the globe and says it's on the other side of the world. And like this web page is coming to you from Japan. And now it's like, okay, whatever, you go to a web page and it's like the allure of that has gone. But I feel like when that new shiny technology and everyone's trying to like play around with it, figure out what works, there's a lot of throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think it's really unfortunate because it's frankly kind of lazy. I feel like people are
Mm,
kind of using this backwards, where I don't know if folks have tried it going the other way around, but you can take like an article that you really appreciated, that you think is well written, put that in ChatGPT, ask it to break it down into an outline. Take your writing, say, here's what I just wrote. How are these two outlines different? And you can use it to make yourself more knowledgeable, to make yourself more
okay.
credible, um, but it's like we go the other way and we take the part that you're supposed to be focusing on as a human and you give it to the thing that is trained to make everybody sound kind of the same, like that median 50 percentile. And then you end up with surprise, like something that's not really that awesome coming out of it. I've also seen a common workflow that I've seen with small businesses that's been really empowering is we get customer feedback, probably every business does. And people will rate like 1 through 5, how happy are you with the service? And we have a field to add a note. And what we used to do before our customer business reviews are we would look at it and we'd go and like try to average the trends out, or go and try to like figure out what are the clients doing well, what are they not doing well, are there things that we could help more with, because um, there's all this information sitting here. But I mean, we're human, so you go and look at it and you have recency bias in the last 10 rows, you kind of forget what was before that. And with tools like ChatGPT, you can go upload it and say, what are the top 3 things this company's doing well? What are the top 3 areas they could improve on? And again, I'm still doing the thinking, I'm still doing the suggestion. I still have to vouch for anything I go and propose to the customer, but I can have the benefit of having read 10,000 reviews on the company's
Mm,
performance 5 minutes before the call. And that's really awesome and really empowering. And there are, you can maybe like a fun scenarios. You have that pulled up on one window, and then when you're in the video chat, and then the person's asking you questions, you can like be asking, pulling out charts, pulling out graphs, and it feels like a human who has only been walking for their whole life, like discovering that a car exists and hopping in and just being like, this is like completely next level. But I think those kinds of use cases that are really valuable, and I think for the PA roles that would kind of elevate the role a bit, are the ones where you're not trying to automate the thinking part, you're automating the implementation to make your thoughts bigger in scope, more impactful, more effective. So those are just a few of the things, but it's like really eye-opening when you see people kind of using it the right way and using
Mm.
the tool as a tool could be instead of just like as a lazy alternative to thinking.
Just can write it all for me. People are doing it on their CVs. I mean, we get new members every week at EPA, and as part of the membership form, they have to send their CV so we can grade them correctly. And Maggie, who volunteers with me, she's not into Chat GPT at all, but she's just about to retire from the NHS this week. Actually, she's still working there part time. But I can spot some of it already in the CVs, and the CV would be I mean, I think Kim's put. I think people are just using the first draft instead of tweaking it to words that you would normally use and not personalizing it. And I think this is what's starting to happen with some CVs. And it's not a PA thing. I just think a lot of people find the resume CV thing really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're in a sales role and can sell anything, including yourself. Um, but it will, oh, yeah, people are going to start to get caught out by this if they haven't already. Elizabeth said our P&C department is starting to wise up on that. I think a lot of firms will. When it comes to things like, yeah, CVs, resumes, your LinkedIn profiles, that where you've got that kind of personal brand and you're trying to sell yourself as a potential employee, I would probably stay well away from AI and chat just to
Yeah, because I
main.
think all of the things that would like let's let's think this through a bit. So let's
Mm,
imagine you are posting on LinkedIn for the
mm,
purposes of attracting the right kind of employer and it works out. That employer who goes and sees your resume, looks you up on LinkedIn, and they go back and they read the posts, ideally, what would happen is it would probably be something that's new or insightful, where they look at it and they say, "Oh, that's an interesting take." Where you should feel like by spending time with that post, you got a little bit smarter. Now I want to spend more time with that person because they seem to have really interesting thoughts on the concept. If you go and just copy paste some ghost written AI content, like I mentioned before, it's like the middle 50 percentile of everything. It's not going to ever do that. So if your goal is to just crank out a bunch of information and have someone say, "Oh wow, they post every day," I mean, sure, yeah, you can do that. But if you want to actually let your insights stand out, that's not the right way to do it. And I think there are plenty of effective, good ways that you can do it. Um, and I think risk mitigation is another good one too. I mean, even thinking about we focus a lot on AI in the job search when you're writing the letter and applying, but you can do AI to do market research and you can upload your resume and say, here's where I'm at now, here's what I did, here's what I'd like to be 10 years, however many down the road. And then you can ask AI, like, what are some suggestions on it, industries I should go in? Do you know any companies I should apply to? What kinds of questions can I ask to learn more about the company in the interview process? Where you're sort of using, again, like if you could pull all of Reddit in 30 seconds and get the answer back, like those are the kinds of use cases that are good on ChatGPT. Um, but if you kind of flip it around and use it from how do I use this to help me achieve my goals, as opposed to how do I use this to minimize the amount of work that I can do, I feel like that opens up a bunch more opportunities.
yeah,
We've also seen like some of our clients when they're diversifying their businesses and they're looking, at least in logistics, a lot of times there's a lot of different directions you can go in. You can sell your warehouse for e-commerce purposes. You can get into international moving. You can do more specialized things like fine arts. And a lot of these big major decisions that company owners have to make, they make it on very little data. Like actually at the end of the day, a lot of times it's a lot of people that I trust. When I went and I trust my friend who's done it before and he said I should do this, or gut feelings that are maybe sometimes veiled behind some amount of data. But to do like real risk mitigation, to say I'm planning on doing this is how much budget I have. If you think about the kinds of things that can go wrong in a project, it's usually the same kinds of things over and over again. So the middling 50% coming out of ChatGPT, if you say I have this much budget, I want to get this outcome, what are the top 10 things that could go wrong? It's probably going to give you a pretty good answer because, I mean, there are only so many things that can go wrong. And I've just seen that be so much more effective when you go and you ask it to, hey, I have a big executive presentation tomorrow. We're proposing spending this many dollars to get this outcome. Here's what I'm planning on presenting. Imagine you hate the plan, and you can tell it to ChatGPT. Imagine you hate it. Shoot it down. Give me 10 reasons why. And you can think about it. You can debate it beforehand, and you can walk into that meeting more prepared. And if you disagree with it, then maybe you got to the bottom of the barrel and you're okay. But if you want to be a bit more thorough, it makes that kind of work much, much more easier. And I just wish people used it more as a way to kind of like help them make the right strategic directions, as opposed to just like, how do I do fewer keystrokes to get to the same outcome?
No, I honestly, what you're saying is brilliant. I teach a lot of MPAs and EAs and project management skills. And one of the areas that I delve into, which assistants are normally quite shocked when they come to my course, is I talk through the top 10 worst run projects in the world. And one of them was the NASA, was it the Columbia? It's been a little while since I've run the course, actually, and talking about in the project and the authority levels and how it actually, that O-ring,
Mm-hmm.
causing that disaster, but how all the mechanics of the human beings and the hierarchy and the project structure, that's where it failed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something useful, this could really help in things like this. Now, actually, one of the worst run projects in the world is our NHS, who came up with a failed IT system, which was a vanity project that just was a disaster. It couldn't have been more of a disaster, but if we'd have, because it was cooked up during Tony Blair's time as Prime Minister.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I mean, I always think some good ideas can come up at drinks receptions, but this wasn't one of them, and it cost the taxpayer a lot, and we're still paying for it now, even though the project was shut down in 2010. But again, you think, wow, if some of this AI had been around then, it might have been able to mitigate, you talking about the risk aspect. We've got some plans to do more around risk management with EAs and PAs, because I think this is something they'd really would be very good at.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real tangible offering to employers and C-suite leaders who are employing our profession. So I really like what you were saying there. It's really interesting. But
Yeah, and we
something
just had a use case recently that was pretty
yeah,
interesting on this, where we have a workflow. If you have a question about the product, you can call, and we have a team of people that'll pick up the phones and they'll answer your question. It's like a service that we offer as part of like getting the inspection service done. And when this role first started, we didn't really know what we were doing, so we started out pretty small, and clients liked the service, so we basically had to mature that process over the course of a couple of years. And what we ended up doing was we got everything into a ticketing system, and that was important because we could see how many help requests are coming in a day, how long does it take somebody to close it, and we got all the data on that. Um, and at the point when we started getting more data driven about it, it was a small call. We only had 2 reps that were full time and a couple of part-time folks, but it was a relatively small call center. And the cool part was we took the data and we went back in time to about 6 months before the second rep was hired. And we were looking at how long it takes to close a ticket. And all of our products are sort of like pay per use. So there's a fee per element. So when somebody signs a contract to be our customer, we'll know, hey, they're going to do 1,000 inspections, 10,000 inspections, however many. And we were able to basically back out, and using the data, we predicted when we hired the second person. Because we're able to look at the call volume going up, and we say, okay, I'm going to swamp this person at this point. And we ended up getting there, but I think there was probably an unnecessary amount of like pain and suffering we had to go through to go past that point of swamping the one person. And now we've got the ability, it's pretty dialed in, where I can go and look at it and I can tell you, oh, if you're chasing down a deal of that size, I can look at the implications on that team, and I can tell you pretty darn accurately, when are you going to have to hire that next person? And those are the kinds of things that make work better for everyone. Now I don't have to rely on a trusted person saying, hey, I'm having to like man the phones 12 hours a day just to keep my head above water, that you can actually like know and forecast better. And I think those are the kinds of things that that are possible when you
Mm.
have AI in the workflow. But it seems like people don't really want to talk about that, and I don't really know why. It's like they'd rather talk
I
about look at this weird picture I drew and all these other like kind of silly use cases. But
I don't know why, because if I think about it, and I can't say for the States, you'll know better than me, but any European, anyone will agree with what I'm about to say. Cool. To get anything done with the banking system here, your bank, your business bank, your personal bank, yeah, you can do a certain amount online, but they're putting in so many security layers now that it's almost like Fort Knox just to get into view your account balance. And with my business bank for EPAA, we're still having to hold on the phone for between 3 and 6 hours to get through to somebody. I would rather they just chuck as much AI and automation, because I don't have that time as a small business owner.
right.
And Vodafone, if I want to call my mobile company, we're going to be sitting there on hold, some dreadful music for hours and hours. And they do tell you to use their tech function on the website, but it's not clever enough to answer some of the intricate questions you have about whatever, broken phone technology. And then actually, lastly, I'm thinking about all our government departments, HMRC, which is our tax, uh,
Mhm.
the hardest department to get hold of. I was on hold for them for 7.5 hours earlier this year.
Oh well.
If we could look at, if they could use technology, AI, the data, we could surely quicken some of this up, and it would be more efficient for the taxpayer. So I think in some areas of society we are crying out for it, frankly.
Exactly. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think if that doesn't get solved, then someone's going to come up with an AI tool that will join the call for you and wait on hold, and then everyone will start using that. It'll probably put some pressure on because now it's a big deterrent, right? Like if I hear
Mm,
you say that, I'm not going to go call and wait 7 hours. That sounds like not fun. But if I had an AI that could do it for me and it'll just like call me back when someone's available, and it kind
mm.
of democratizes and makes it really easy to do that. I think kind of hope that companies do the right thing, but there is a certain amount of checks and balances and forcing functions built in that could make that decision for people.
Yeah, it would just make things a bit smoother. I think my whole thing, the only doubts I have around any sort of technology, AI included, that I remember as a young teenager when a lot of this tech started coming in, new tech and the iPhones, and I remember all the marketing from Apple and this, your whole life's going to be on this device that you can fit in your handbag. That was deliberately targeted at women.
Hmm.
Um, but we're more plugged in than ever before. People are more stressed than ever before, spending more time online than ever before. And we've got to hope somewhere down the line that this is all this marvelous technology and this AI being able to do some of that, transactional thinking for us, and processes, that we can actually grab some time back, because I'm failing to see it at the moment. What I saw during COVID with EAs and PAs and the cost of living crisis last year and some of this year, people are exhausted, not just PAs, but generally people are exhausted. And I think this is where some of the negative reaction comes from EAs and PAs, because they're kind of it might not be fair for some of them. It's like, I haven't got the brain space to learn this. How on earth am I going to get the time to learn this? And yet we need to. Chris made a comment, a really useful comment, earlier on in the chat. She said she hadn't seen any job descriptions yet, including AI and prompting skills for assistants or HR in Germany. As far as she can see, mainly bigger companies are introducing AI tools for their teams. I mean, it clearly comes up in your sector in job descriptions and adverts that you
Yeah,
would
yeah, and
expect.
I think it's we even see to our customers when they leave their companies and they're applying elsewhere, they'll often put like proficient in Yembo AI or proficient in AI parenthesis Yembo, that we do see people mentioning that they are trained in AI. The industries that Yembo operates in, they're very operational focused. So when I'm talking to leaders there, I always encourage the operations team to be involved in any AI pilots that people kick off. And I think that's really important because those are the teams that handle the exceptions that come up and the problems. So it's like relatively easy as a C-suite leader to kind of oversimplify the processes and say, oh, we'll just put AI here and it'll work. But a lot of the make or break decisions are, how do you handle the exceptions? And that's
Mm,
why the operations teams are really valuable, because they'll be able to tell you, like, don't even bother trying to do this. There's too many exceptions. I can't standardize anything, and putting it here, this will work better. And I think also on the HR people ops side of things, that that works well, where it's not really fair as an employer to complain that people don't have skills if you're not like paying it forward and doing your part to train people. And a lot of this, it's not like as complicated as going back to school and studying a new discipline. It's really just making the time for it, where a lot of these use cases, it's having someone to show around whatever tools that you're planning on using. Most AI tools seem to have like one of three value propositions that they offer. It's either better data, like give you more insights, it's an easier user interface, or it is saving costs, like it's less labor. And if you go and you look at like what are the goals that my company is trying to achieve, and go find some areas in those, I feel like that's like a better way to go about bringing AI in, because there's only ever 24 hours in a day, and yes, you can be more
mm,
efficient or less efficient, but to be able to like not have to cram one more thing in, but just say, hey, where does this company want to go anyway? What are the impediments to us getting there? And if the AI value prop is save time, improve user experience, or reduce costs, something there has got to line up with the mission, and then you've got an excuse. It's not like another side hustle that you have to go take on top of your job. It's a, this is what the company's doing anyway. And a lot of this, at least in a small business like I run, a lot of these initiatives, the alternative is to do nothing, right? Like there's so many things to do in a day, where it's not like if AI does this workflow, then a person's not doing it. It's AI or nothing. um, and I feel like there's a lot of talk around like, oh, are you using ChatGPT? And these focus on like the tools, where I feel like the focus really ought to be on, how are we defining the problems that we're trying to solve, and then go find a tool that fits that bill. You wouldn't
mm.
just like go to a hardware store and pick a tool because it looks cool. You have like a project that you're
No.
working on and a goal that you want to get, and then you go and you find the right tool for that job. So that would just be my suggestion if you're in a position where you're influencing the process, or if you've got a big thorny problem. Don't
Mm.
try to see the AI training as like a another thing to do after that. Is try to like zoom into that and see, are there parts of that where you could use AI to help you get to that goal faster, because that's why it exists. That's why people are spending so much time and energy on building it.
Yeah, and I think whilst it's not on PAEA job adverts and role specs in an obvious way at the moment, it probably will be with some of the tech firms here. Um, but whilst it isn't in a big way, we're in a really competitive market now. This is one of the most brutal PAEA job markets I've seen since 2008, and I track all the trends, and I'm hearing these, quite frankly, at times horror stories from EAs who historically would have been snapped up pronto and wouldn't have had to
Mm-hmm.
do a huge amount to find another job. So what I've been trying to say to the members is try and be different from other EAs, because I always had to be, because I always found it
Mm-hmm.
very competitive in the market. So I was always trying to, what else can I add that I don't think other PAs and EAs have got? And so I would almost go and do that now, even if your current company isn't asking for it, just in case that you need to go to the job market, or you're going for a restructure and trying to keep your job. And it's, what else can I bring to the table? Um, it's just because what I fear with this profession, and Chris has made an excellent point about this. It's not on there now, but as has been the record, it will suddenly appear on job adverts, and then we'll have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of PAs running around saying, "But I don't have this. I don't have this." It's happened countless times, and so that's why I want people to try and be a bit more on a front foot. And I was always asking the question during my career: is what can I do to be more employable?
Mm-hmm.
We don't, even the other aspects of technology like cyber security. That's quite, that's something that troubles a lot of C-suite and leadership teams, and yet probably less than 5% of assistants in the UK have got like a basic certificate in cyber. Yet if you
Mm-hmm.
took that in this current market to an employer and said, look, this is something I'm working on, and to be able to support your leadership with that. We're not saying we can fix cyber for the company, but a lot of execs, I've seen it for myself in the FTSE world, they get attacked directly, these cyber attacks. And
Hmm.
so if you start to build up that knowledge base on it, it's actually something that could be really valuable to employees. And that's the way I always come at it. I'm just trying to get us to be more front footing with it. We're seeing a clambering over LinkedIn now. So a lot of influencers and leaders in our world are putting up posts about AI. But unfortunately, a lot of it's the same strap line. AI won't take the jobs. AI won't take the jobs. It's almost quite robotic. And I'm like, well, it may take good chunks of the job. So we need to start carving out what the rest of that job looks like. Otherwise, you will be on the restructure list. And it's as simple as that. And that's my HR brain saying that, because it's down to brass tactics and it's down to the bottom line at the end of the day, and money. And we've been in a very stagnated economy here, which is carrying on at the moment, which will hopefully get better. It will get better next year. But yeah, it's just trying to get people to be more front, sort of forward focusing, I guess, with all of
Yeah,
this.
and I think you hit the nail on the head, Victoria, where you mentioned like, what can I do to be more employable? That is a question that will never become obsolete, because that means that you're sort of focusing on what are the biggest problems that this company is facing, and how can I be more helpful in helping that company achieve its goals? Like, take that to the bank, or play that back 100 years from now. It's not going to be obsolete. And I think rather than seeing there like being a shrinking piece of the pie, and now I have to, oh, AI took that, I only have half the pie left. I think
Mm.
this gives like other avenues and other paths. Like you mentioned with security, I got a note in the mail yesterday from my doctor's office that they had a data breach, and now I guess my medical information is in the hands of who knows what. Like, you digitize everything, it makes these unintended side effects, and oftentimes people don't really have the bandwidth to think through like 2 or 3 steps ahead. So it's oftentimes way too late, where you have those security issues where now we're like worrying about it as a as a society. So I think like being able to focus on what are those areas that are going to become more in demand, and how can I make myself more useful? Doesn't get old, doesn't get obsolete.
Well, you mentioned about the security breach. This 2 weeks ago, wasn't it, a global outage? So was it Blue Stripe, something part of Microsoft?
CrowdStrike, yep.
That's it. We're not even part of them, but our business was affected. Our Teams, SharePoint, everything was gone. And then I got some of it back over the coming days, and I'm thinking, I'm not even part of any of this, but we still got affected by it. And actually, we realised we had only been concentrating on where we were connected to certain systems and looking at what happens there. And so it's made me think differently now, thinking, wow, okay, so any global sort of outage, even if you're not directly connected or a customer of that system, I could still be affected. And how are we still going to operate? So I've started thinking through that in more detail, because you
Hmm.
just don't know, like you say, it could
Exactly.
be,
At least here in the States, a lot of flights were grounded then. So if you were traveling then, it's like there's not even any thought. You just can't get on the airplane. It's not there. So yeah, these
I
kinds of
know.
things, we're getting more and more dependent on technology. And there is there's a reason, there's a promise, and there are benefits, and um it's like it's not for nothing. But I think being aware of what those downside risks are and getting good at making it not an issue, super
Mm.
valuable skill to have.
Now, we've had a question here from Chris. Would you suggest that prompt engineering is the most useful to learn? Just trying to look at that here, I can't see it, or rather low code and no code tools.
Sure. Yeah, this is a question I get asked a lot about. I feel like the prompt engineering phrase is a bit of a misnomer. It's sort of like a bit of an affront to engineering. These AI tools are so new. My view is the user interfaces are just really bad. It looks like you're messaging a human and you can ask a human anything. But ChatGPT, I think, can pass the bar in some states, at least here in the US. But if you ask it visual reasoning puzzles that like a 5 or 6 year old kid could solve, it fails. But it makes it look like you can ask anything. So I think for now, obviously it depends on the use case. If there's a custom built tool like specific for the problem you're trying to solve, you'll probably get the best output pursuing that. Um, I would think prompt engineering, I hope it doesn't stay around forever. I think as the tools get better, as they learn, as that user interface gets easier to run, I would hope that the effort that it takes to get reasonable output from it that's not spewing false information or giving you like just nonsense should just get easier. I don't have mobile phone keyboard typist on my resume. It's like a skill that I have, but the overhead of doing that is so low that it's like not really worth bringing up on a resume that you're good at it. I would be thrilled if that's what happened to prompt engineering down the road. But at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to understanding the problem that you're trying to solve. And if there's not a structured tool that's like custom built for the workflow that you're doing, you may need to dive into a little bit of prompt engineering to get there. But all these folks that are like putting prompt engineer on their LinkedIn profiles, I don't see that lasting for that long. There's too much money being invested in improving the technology to like erode that barrier that's needed, that I just don't feel like that's like a lasting hill to put your flag on.
No, thank you. So we are coming to the end now. So obviously you are an entrepreneur, and you've written a great book. Now I know we can't get I know I've got the print version of it, but we can't get that. Can they download, buy a copy online on your website of
Sure, yeah.
your?
So for those who didn't know, the book is called Grow Up Fast: Lessons from an AI Startup, kind of encapsulates the lessons that I've learned in deploying AI, iterating on it, learning from it, kind of more of what we chatted about. It is available on Amazon. If you have a Kindle account, you can download it on Kindle. And there's
Okay,
an audiobook on Spotify if you prefer audiobooks. So I can send you the links afterwards, Vic, and
please
make them
do.
available. There's a few UK options available.
And I'd like to ask you as an entrepreneur and leader in your own right, what is on your mind in terms of business right now? Like what are the priorities in terms of being a leader? I know it differs for every sector and every leader. But it's good for us to learn those
Sure.
sort
I
of
think
priorities.
so we're in a pretty tough business of we're not replacing like Outlook with Gmail or something along those lines. I was in a client office a couple months ago who actually had a physical typewriter, and I thought they were kidding when I asked like, "What are the process you're replacing?" And they showed that. So I think the thing that's always top of mind for me is how do we make our technology so easy to use that it's just a no-brainer? And if you have someone who's been using a typewriter for 10, 20 years, like it's easy to be like arrogant in tech and just assume the chronological snobbery, oh, it's older, but like there are reasons and it works, and that there hasn't been a enough of an impetus to change it. And just that's kind of what's always top of my mind is how do we get so much insight into that person's day-to-day life that we can make the AI technology easier, that it's just a complete no-brainer. And I feel like that doesn't come for free. And that's something that it takes a lot of people, a lot of effort to get right. And I just wish more people did that, where people don't really care about AI. That's a means to an end. They care about getting to their destination. And I would just rather work with people that are kind of on that same mission to help get there. And if we take a boat or a car or a yacht, it doesn't matter so much. It's more about are we pointed in the right direction? Are we going at the right speed? And is this where we all want to end up? And that's what's really important.
And are there any bits you don't like about being an entrepreneur and leader and running this scaling business?
Yeah, maybe we should book like 6 hours and I can fill you in. But yeah, I feel like as a
Yeah.
lead, it's like most days it's net positive. I think
Yeah.
it's all I wouldn't do anything. I can't imagine doing anything else now that I'm doing this.
Yeah.
One thing to bear in mind if you're considering it is you become the junk drawer. Is all of the really interesting, exciting work. Usually that's easier to hand off to somebody else, and it's like the annoying exceptions that come up that it's your responsibility to do it. um, so I think those are the parts I'd love to have less exceptions in my day. I feel like I have a responsibility to my team to have them deliver on the goals that we agreed to, so I try to get out ahead of any of like interruptions where I can and make sure like, okay, I don't have quarterly deliverables that I've committed to personally. I commit on behalf of the team. And then when I see impediments come up, I try to take them so that they're not distracted by them. Um, but I mean, if you know of any tools, AI or any workflows that kind of make that easier, um, I did it for fun for a week. I woke up and when I got to my desk before I unlocked the screen or anything, I wrote down like my predictions for what I thought I was going to accomplish that day, and then you compare at the end and you see how far off based on whatever it came up was. And yeah, it was kind of nuts. Like after about 2 or 3 days, I was like, this is completely different. And anything that helps that, I'd be down to learn more about.
You have actually summed up. You need to put this in your presentations because every leader will literally empathize and be nodding around about being the junk drawer. That it is. I love that. I absolutely love that. We need a poster, a meme, or something, to put out there because yeah, you've just encapsulated leadership and why it can be really, really frustrating. Yeah, as you say, net positive most of the time, but yeah, I would definitely agree. Everything I've been through as a small business owner, I actually think after coming out of COVID and the cost of living crisis, and now we're juggling what our country's looking like at the moment, I'm just thinking, how am I still human?
Exactly.
And not turned into a statue. But yeah, it's definitely I wouldn't swap it. I'm glad for everything that I've learned on this journey so far. But I'm also like you, I'm glad I had that experience in corporate as well and big organizations and to look at it from that viewpoint. But it's been such a pleasure to have you on. I could talk to you all day. No, it's been really, really helpful, and to actually hear from someone who's an expert, and understands this, because obviously we're trained very differently as assistants, and the future is exciting, but what I don't want us to do, especially in the UK, is get caught out like we did in 2008. I don't want to see PAs walking around
Hmm.
London with sandwich boards on trying to get a job. That's where I sit.
Hmm.
And I'll do anything if that means I am the Grim Reaper, the controversial one in the industry. Then I'll say what needs to be said as long as it keeps people employed, and
Hmm.
that's what I worry about for them. You've gotten some thank you here. Really great discussion, really interesting. Well, team, if you're in London, anyone catching up on the recording, obviously Zach's over in London speaking at various events, and something for us on Friday, the 4th of October at Fox Williams, a top law firm in London. So we'll be there at lunch when you arrive, and then we've got lots of back-to-back sessions for the afternoon. So it's evolution versus revolution, because I do think we need to be a bit more revolutionary to get this profession where we want it to be, and to get everybody charged up about their assistant roles again, and supporting leadership through this as well. That's the big part of it, is getting them through it and ourselves. So it's sort of double whammy, really. But thank you for joining us, and I hope you've all eaten your dinner.
Well, thank you so much, Victoria. This was great, very insightful, and yeah, looking forward to seeing everyone in person in a couple of months.
Yes, and hopefully we might get a bit of an Indian summer then, so the weather might be okay-ish when you come.
Well, we'll
Because we
see.
wouldn't want you, yeah, we wouldn't want you to experience any of the rainy weather we've had of late.
Mhm.
But thank you, and honestly, for any of you, well, I assume most of you will be on LinkedIn. You can connect with Zach on LinkedIn as well, and follow his work on there. And yeah, I'll see some of you later on this week in London, and some of you other parts of the country throughout the rest of this year. But thank you very much. Night,
Right, thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Have a good night.
Bye.
I
Bye.
know.